Hey guys, welcome to the Laying Foundations podcast. This is your co-host Davis Hambrick. Doing alongside me today is Walker. What's up, man?
What's up, Davis? How you doing today?
Man, I'm great. I'm excited. What about you, man?
Man, I'm looking forward to it. Our guest today is hilarious and very knowledgeable. An Auburn grad. I mean, I'm excited for it.
I'm excited too. So, guys, let's get right to it. Today we have a very special guest. I know I say this every week, but the next guest is special. So, Jasper Smith, that works at Viega as the district manager, and just from our time together, getting to talk for thesis research, and then before the meeting, we just had a good time catching up. But man, I'm really excited for y'all to get to meet Jasper Smith. What's up, Jasper?
Thanks for having me, Davis Walker. Great opportunity. Appreciate it.
Man, we're excited for it, Jasper. Man, to start off, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm actually originally from outside of Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Wound up at Auburn for building science and finished my master's in 2007 from Auburn and worked predominantly in petrochemical and industrial most of my professional career. And here in the last couple of years, actually made a transition to what Davis was talking about with Viega, which is a German um, pipe and plumbing component manufacturer. Kind of my background here behind me is a house that I worked on with my uncle. That's my side hustle, I guess you'd say. Um, but my main objective is to eventually one day go into custom home building. So that's actually how I wound up in construction, was because of my uncle. He was one of the more successful members of my family, and he started out in the trades. Started out as an electrician, and eventually went out on his own, became a GC doing custom homes. And what he taught me was that the custom home building industry is pretty recession proof, which I think that anybody that's been around commercial construction and even production residential has seen the ebbs and flows of market impacts on the industry. And custom home building, for the most part, the clientele that you're dealing with are much more demanding. It's not, three options and that's what you get, but uh, you're rewarded consequently based on that, with always having clientele to keep you afloat. So that's a long term goal. I'm actually doing a custom house right now, my first one. So that's a that's my side thing. My day to day is working for Viega, but glad to be here, guys.
Man, we're excited
Yeah,
about it.
man, I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate you being willing to open up about it. Jasper, if we can go back, I remember from our talk back in October, you talked about skilled trades and you just spoke about your uncle being an electrician and kind of starting his own custom home builder. Let's think back and think about if you see that. I know for you as a person to see your uncle, go from an electrical person into doing his custom home. How great or how awesome was it to get to experience that with him?
Yeah, so he when I was a kid coming up, he was an electrician and kind of was doing the home building thing on the side, and eventually became a full time home builder. So he and I have been to the National Association of Home Builders show, the NAHB show, International Builder Show, a couple times, which that's a great experience. It's probably one of the best trade shows in the country, and I mean it's not a public trade show per se. It's predominantly industry related, and it's I think like the biggest next to SEMA or something. So it was it was a great experience to see that coming up around him, and he taught me that, I mean, kind of like the Auburn Creed, it's a practical world, and you can only get what you put in. So I believe in work, hard work.
Hey, that's a great creed. I think Auburn really tries to push their students and let them identify with that creed because life is hard, work's hard, but it's good, it's rewarding. So going off of what you kind of said, talking about your uncle being or your electrician and you and getting to work in that field, man. And you talked earlier that you went to Auburn, you got your master's, and so that's awesome. That's a fantastic degree to get, as well as your master's to go into that area. First of all, what was your master's in degree?
Building construction.
Oh,
I
so you
mean,
went and back
yeah,
and got your building construction degree.
yep.
Okay. So what do you think what was the biggest difference between having been working in the field throughout your entire life, working now in the field, compared to the degree that you got at Auburn?
So the one thing that I've seen over the years, just kind of is a transition, and Davis and I actually kind of talked about this in our conversation for his class. Over the years, I have seen two things. One, uh, you're seeing less young blood in the trades themselves, which is actually one of the things that Viega, my day job, my primary job, that's one of the reasons that they are starting to gain market shares, because they are providing like direct sweat replacement fittings. They're providing a alternative to like a threaded or a welded fitting as well. So it's press technology. It's pressing fittings versus sweating or brazing or welding or threading fittings. And one of the reasons why they're gaining market share is not that threading is not a skilled craft, right? I mean, there is a certain level of skill involved in threading, but certainly with solder and brazing and welding, especially, there's definitely a skill involved in it. And what across the market, whether you're talking about pipe joining, whether you're talking about residential construction, framing, what have you, there's really been a shift in the supply and demand, right? I know when I was in high school, I had mentioned wanting to go into the trades and potentially going a technical school route, or even going join a union hall somewhere to like learn an apprenticeship type program. And at the time it was, and I was coming out in like late 90s era. So I was really discouraged from doing that. And I think that what we're seeing now, I don't think that was unique to me. I think what we're seeing now is, for many years, I mean, I look at my grandfather who came back from World War II and was a plumber. When he came back from World War II, learned plumbing as a trade, and then eventually wound up becoming a millwright at a manufacturing plant. But for him, he really encouraged my dad to go to school, right? He encouraged my dad to go get advanced education and get higher education and get a college degree. And so I think that same mentality carried on for a long time. And I mean, even people like Elon Musk have made in recent history comments about the MBAization of America. I think that there's been such an influence, both from like people like my granddad's generation that were influencing my dad, and then even like my dad's generation influencing like when I was in high school, and guidance counselors saying, oh, well, if you've got some level of aptitude, you don't need to go into the trades. And so now we have this huge gap in workforce development, where, and that's where Viega is saying, okay, look, we can offer you a faster, easier way to join pipes that's just as effective. And likewise, now, what I see is the guys that are wanting to come up, that are wanting to go into construction, they are choosing for a lot of situations to go to like a building science type program. And the one thing that I see that is the big difference on the building science side of, I said there were two things that I see. The building science side of it is there's a lot more advanced technologies that are coming out, and the students that are graduates of like a building science program are really going to be the ones that take it to the next level, that will, I think, be the future of construction. Because like whether it be building information modeling, whether it be like using like 3D laser scanning, things of that nature, all of the future technology, and probably some that you two have experienced in more recent college than I have, that are going to be things that I don't even know about, right? And so I think that the key part is going to be taking those technologies and using them to supplement what's a widening labor shortage. Long answer to your question.
Yeah. No,
No,
that's
I
great.
like
I
it. That
mean,
was a great answer.
I do too. Man, that was awesome. I mean, we can go a lot of different ways with this. I kind of, I'm trying to think, because that was a lot, and I loved it. So let's maybe talk about Viega. One of the things, and then transition into skilled labor. One of the things I read recently was has this press into the trades program, where they're investing into 30 post-secondary schools. And, from where we talked, Jasper, we talked about the skilled trade, and it really made me think, I wonder, for your granddad, influencing your father and then ending up influencing you and maybe to the counselor perspective. I wonder if back then, because of how your grandfather was treated, because how he was as a plumber, that's carried some of that into where we are today.
Sure, I absolutely think so. I think that's a very accurate observation. I think that one of the things that, and going back to that guidance counselor making the comment like, oh well, you're too, the exact words were, you're too smart for the trades. And I think that was really the deal, is that there was, I don't want to call it a shame or a stigma, but I mean, that's basically what I think it was. That oh
Yeah,
oh, you're a working person. So, and I think that really caused a lot of people to maybe shy away from them, right? Because that, almost like there was not a pride in the craftsmanship, right? But I will never forget one of
yeah,
my lecturers when I was in college. Uh, this lecturer um, talked about, there was some, and I don't know where it was. It was somewhere in Pennsylvania, but it was like this old barn or something that was built years ago, like in the late 1700s, something like that, when trades were truly skilled trades and a craftsmanship. And he said that he had seen it on like one of his research trips or something. And what he talked about was how tight the joints were, that were not made with any modern tooling. And he said you literally could not fit, as old as it was, you could not fit a sheet of paper between the joints. And
Crazy.
that's when it was truly a skilled craft. And so when you look at, Davis, you're talking
yeah,
about like Viega now. So Viega is saying, okay, we recognize that we've got this shortage of craft. So now, and so Viega, their fittings range from 4 inch down to half inch. So they are looking at, okay, how can we supplement the skilled craft that we do have, and say, okay, so if it's 6, 8, 10 inch pipe, whatever, the welders, we've only got a few welders, so let's use them on that. And now we can take somebody who understands basic geometry, but maybe don't have the skills to weld. We can now give them a way to reliably and efficiently make quality pipe connections that are going to withstand an indefinite amount of time.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing about what you're saying is that most people, or the people who have this stigmatism towards trades and all that kind of such, they believe this one way, but then on the other end, they'll complain about how the level of work and a lot of things that they buy or that they go into or et cetera is poor, and it's bad work.
Right.
It's like you go,
Right.
you have houses, and this speaks to you because you're a custom home builder. There's a lot of homes nowadays that are either built by a custom home builder or just massively built subdivisions that are
Right.
they're horrible. I mean, they have
Right.
the cheapest materials, the cheapest labor, everything is cheap, 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 and just so that you can make a profit. There's no pride in people's work anymore, and that's what the story about the barn is really cool, because that's what America used to be built on. I mean, that is
Right.
how
Right.
that's America. It's quality craftsmanship. It is taking pride in what you do. And nowadays no one has that anymore. I'm sure you can speak to that. And you've seen people in the field of construction in general that believe that way, even
Absolutely.
in commercial.
Absolutely. I mean, in commercial, and it's not unique to residential. It's not unique to commercial. It's not unique to industrial. There is definitely, and I think that's what happened, was we created this stigmatization of skilled craft, right? And so the people who might have taken their work seriously, like, okay, think back to your high school, right? Think back to your high school days, and the kids, for me at least, and I don't know if it was like this in yours. I mean, this is kind of a question actually, but when I
a
was in high
little
school,
younger.
the kids that were the vocational school kids were really the ones that didn't want to take algebra or take math. It was like a way to get out of doing something. And like my brother, I tell this story because my brother legitimately wanted to be a welder in high school, right? And so he got really disenfranchised and ultimately professionally never became a welder because the experience he had in high school was he got really disenfranchised when he went to the vocational program. And what he found was okay, these are all the derelicts that didn't want to like take algebra or chemistry or whatever other scholastic subject. They went here because they thought, okay, well, I'll just go mess around in the shop and beat on some metal or whatever.
Right.
And so I think that's what happened. It was like we as a society, and I don't know when it happened. I don't know if it was post World War II, if it was when exactly that shift happened. I would be speculating to try to put a pinpoint on a generation to say, oh, well, this is when we started doing it. But I think you're exactly right. Is that's what happened was because of that. Now you get, in a lot of cases, the people that were joining were the bottom of the barrel. So I think that goes back to why it is absolutely critical that we start encouraging young people. And that's one of the things, like you pointed out, that Viega is doing. They're trying to get young people involved in the trades. And we start saying, hey, look, to make a good living does not require a college degree. And to be in a truly skilled trade is not to be a laborer. There is actually skill involved in pipe fitting. There is actually skill involved in welding. There is actually skill involved in electrical. Insert whatever trade you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, and Davis, you can speak to this as well. This is kind of what one of the main goals, one of the goals of the podcast is to really show high schoolers, early college, that there's many different options than just college. But I think, speaking to what you were talking about earlier, I don't know if it's one time. I really believe it's just been a gradual decrease throughout the years, maybe starting World War II or whatever. But even in, just real quick for me personally, I went to two high schools. So I went to private school and I also went to public school. I transferred for football. It's a long story. We'll save that for another time. But in my private school,
no, come on, let's talk about it.
No. But so at my private school, there was never a mention of trades ever. Like that is not anything that was ever brought up. It was, you have to do math, you have to do the sciences, you have to do English, and you have to go to college and you have to get a degree. I don't think at one point in my entire private school career they ever talked about the trades, ever talked about construction, right? And this is high and mighty, quote unquote, private school, and I love the people there, and it was a great school, but that's just kind of how the world's gone too. But then I go to my public school, and even there's really no mention of trades anymore. Everything's transitioned to the quote unquote fancy blue collar jobs, white collar jobs, like engineering, right? Like we had engineering classes and we had robotics and all that kind of stuff, which sure, they're fantastic. We have to have those. That is where the world's going in many areas. But you have to have someone to build whatever the engineer designs, and you have to have someone.
That's right.
Yeah, and exactly, and that's what a lot of people don't realize, is that some of these people coming out of college, and they're in $100,000 worth of debt in some cases, and they're only making $40,000 a year right out of college, and that's not a sad amount. Like, that's a great living, but you could come in the trades and you could be making 60, 70,000 plus more, depending upon what you do or how long you're in it, right out of high school once you finish training, and be in no debt. And that's what a lot of people just don't realize, because it's not fancy. It is not what people want to talk about.
Right. And I think to that point about that, it's not fancy. I think that the big thing that, and Viega has been good about doing this is showing that, look, we are transitioning. We are improving our building techniques over the years, right? So a lot of the things that may have made a particular trade unattractive in the past, we don't even deal with now, right? I mean, that's a lot, like, for example, on plumbing, right? There used to be a lot of, and you still have poured lead for some joints on some pipe joining methods. But the point is that what used to maybe be something nasty has now kind of, we've gotten smarter over the years, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And so I think that's another big thing. And it's funny you said that the private school deal. I also came from private school before I went to public high school, and I was private school educated until I went to public high school. And the only vocations that were mentioned were the clergy. So
Oh wow.
that was when they talked about vocation day in private school. It was what kind of clergy were you going to become if you wanted to do that. But,
Far off from
obviously,
construction.
yeah, obviously it fell on deaf ears for me. So, but yeah, so I mean, then you got into high school and public high school for me, and it was, you're exactly right. I mean, it was still not something that was recruited. And I think in fairness to the high schools now, I think that high schools are beginning to see that, hey, look, whoa, we need to dial this back. We need to really invest some more money in our trades programs. My cousin, actually, she is a I think they call her the college or education,
Advisor.
not college. Yeah, it's some kind of liaison, something
Gotcha.
liaison. She works for GE Appliances, and basically they work with GE Appliances in Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville, the big county there where Louisville is at is Jefferson County. So Jefferson County School Board actually has now a person who is just the superintendent for college, or not. I don't think they even call it college. I think they call it vocational and career education. And so they've recognized it because industry has come to them and said, hey, look, we need to work on having a partnership. And I mean, like AIDT, the Alabama, I think it's Alabama Industrial Development or something. I forget exactly what it is, but it's the workforce development in Alabama. They do the exact same thing with like the community colleges. Where I'm at in North Alabama, we're not far from Calhoun Community College, and they've got back to, you mentioned the robotics side of things, right? Well, they've got a huge robotics technology park that has attracted tours from governmental leadership and investors, like companies, that kind of thing. They all want to go see that, but that's on one side of the road. On the other side of the road, they actually just opened a brand new automotive technology building, and that's going back to what I was saying
That's
about
awesome.
how that it's kind of shifted, right? And so maybe some of the things that made the negative perceptions have changed. You look at a car now, right? Like on basic automobile mechanics. In years past, people were quote unquote shade tree mechanics. They understood that, okay, you got a carburetor that's mixing your air and your fuel, and you got a spark plug, and you've got like these basic mechanics. You look at a car now.
It's electronic.
My wife's Jeep Grand Cherokee has 7 computers. When they had an issue with troubleshooting a computer deal, the guy's like, we know it's one of the computers, we're just not sure which one yet. And I said, well, how many does it have? And they go, oh, it has 7. And that's a fairly recent development, right? I mean, like the first truck I had out of college, I think had 2 computers, right? It was a GM product. I think it had 2 computers at the time. So in less than 20 years span, we've now got computers that are vehicles that have 20 computers on them. So even the trade side of things has rapidly developed in ways that I think make it even more attractive.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's awesome. One of the things you touched on, and what I'm really thinking about is, the working conditions have changed. It's not the same thing that your grandfather went through. And that's not saying anything about your grandfather, but just back in that time, hey, it was a lot tougher, just plain and simple.
100%.
There wasn't this thing called OSHA.
That's exactly what I guess. Absolutely. OSHA is a relatively recent development in the workforce world.
So, I mean, the working conditions are awesome. And I've gotten to talk to Jason Phelps from Go Build Alabama, and he's talking about the work development side. That's one of the things that I'm really passionate about, getting to interview people, because we want to hear your story about how can we help adjust, how can we address this misconception, because one of the biggest things is we see, that dirty construction worker. Oh, we don't want our son to go do that. And it's not that at all. Like Walker and I talk about all the time. Some of those guys that you think are the bottom of the totem pole have great depth and great knowledge of people's skills, and just they can talk to you and relate to you about so many different things because of struggles they've gone into. And people are like, that's a dirty construction worker. Like, guys, no. And that's my real point. If you're ever looking down on someone, then the person to look at, it's you. You shouldn't work down on someone from another profession. That doesn't have to do with construction. It doesn't matter if he's sweeping a street, to be honest. I'm sorry I'm ranting here, but
no. You're exactly right.
Well,
you're exactly. Exactly.
One of my real quick, like, you brought that point and made me think this real quick. One of my mentors, he's awesome. He's very wise. But one of the things that he's really taught to me a lot about is he never asks people what they do. He never asks it. He asks them who they are. He wants to know about them. And he'll have people, he'll say, are you a husband? Are you a father? Who are you? I want to know about you. I don't know what you want to do. And the funny thing is I used to work out with him when I'm home from school. I'll work out with him, in the mornings every morning. And he's an early riser, so he likes his early workout mornings. I had to really become, a lot more disciplined during that time. But one day we're working out, and this guy comes up to us and he starts talking, and then instinctively, he probably doesn't even mean it. He doesn't mean anything bad about it at all. But he asked my mentor, "Hey, what do you do? And he asked it 2 or 3 times, and probably not even knowingly. But what's crazy is, especially men in general, but we like to know what someone does so we can be validated by if it's in our minds less than what we think we do is, then we feel better, and we feel better than them because, oh, I have a better job, or I do this and this and this, so it's like, what if I told you I was some sort of trades worker or whatever? Would you think less of me? And a lot of them would. And that's the sad part, because the funny part is some of them, and life's not about money, but some of the trade workers that they're quote unquote looking down on are making double what they're making, and they're working in a white collar job.
Absolutely. It's like there was a YouTube video of some guy that was talking about it, that he had a teacher somewhere that said, oh, you can't do this math or that math or whatever. And the language was kind of colorful, but the guy's like, he starts wiping his eyes with $100 bills. And he's like, I'm glad I got this paper to make myself feel better. And he blows his nose in a $100 bill. But that's the deal, is that, like, people, and here's the thing, I'm going to say something, and this is, I really hope this part does not get cut out of the podcast, because I think people need to hear this. The kid that's thinking about being a heart surgeon, okay? The kid that's thinking about being a dentist, all right? I use those 2 examples, but it applies to a lot of things within medicine, not just those 2. So my dentist, when I was a kid, I asked him how I became a dentist. He said, well, I liked working with my hands, and I was fascinated by concrete, but I knew I wasn't tough enough to make it as a concrete worker, because those are some pretty tough guys. And I said, so you became a dentist? And he goes, yeah, because I'm just pouring little concrete molds in your teeth. That's all I'm doing. It's like concrete on like a dollhouse scale. And I was like, I never thought about it. He goes, oh yeah, like I got a little trowel that, like, I finished down your molars. If I put a filling in your molar. And he goes, that's what made me become a dentist. And I was like, wow, that is, because I asked him, I said, how did you wind up in dentistry? Because like dentistry is such a loathed profession as well, right? Like everybody's like, oh, I hate going to the dentist. And he's like, no, because he wanted to be a concrete worker. And he's like, I wasn't tough enough to, like, work in concrete, because concrete is rough on your hands for sure. But
the analogy, that is awesome.
Yeah. And that's the deal with, like, the heart surgeon thing, right? So the heart surgeon, I talked to a heart surgeon one time, and heart disease runs in my family. If you can't tell from this image, I'm not exactly the picture of health, but I don't have the discipline, Walker, that you're talking about, getting up and working out in the morning. And I climb to the top of a ladder. I'm going, all right, boys, hold on just a second. We got to catch our breath here. We'll get back to it in a second.
Oh, but, I get that. Don't worry.
Yeah. So it gets worse as you get older, trust me. But yeah, so this doctor, I was talking to this heart surgeon,
And the deal was like, so my wife had like a heart murmur or something. I forget what it was. It wasn't arrhythmia, but it was like some kind of deal. Like it was acting weird. And so they went in and so I went with her to the doctor, and the guys seemed very knowledgeable. I liked his bedside manner and this, that, and the other. And I said something. I was like, hey, you don't take other patients, do you? I was like, I know she came here as a referral. I was like, but I have heart disease in my family. And, I said, and would you take another patient or whatever? And he goes, well, what kind of heart disease? You like, what is most of your problems? And so I was like, blockages, this kind of thing. He goes, no. That's a plumber. I'm an electrician. I deal with like the pulse rates and that. So he goes, that's a plumber. You need a plumber. That's different. He's like, I would take you on, but that's a plumber.
Holy cow.
And I never thought about that
Man.
until he said that. And I was like, that's all the medical industry is. They're body mechanics. So if people who may like question it and go, what am I doing? Okay, look, you become an orthopedic. All that is, that's a structural guy, right? You got an iron worker or an orthopedist. It's the same deal. It's what holds up your body. The guy that deals with the carotid arteries and you got your clogged arteries, that's a plumber, right? Because the heart's nothing but a pump. The guys that deal with like if your heart gets out of rhythm, that's awesome. An electrician.
Yeah.
The neuro guys, that's still electrician,
Walker.
Where did you find this
Walker,
guy?
we need to talk to your dad about this one, man.
No, I'm telling you, hey, you bring that up. What's funny is I actually used to be pre-med because my dad's a chiropractor and medical doctor. And so I thought I was going to go that track. And so the funny part is my first interview I ever had for a internship as a building science major, they asked me, because I transferred schools and I came to Auburn and everything, but they asked me, so why are you in building science now? What made you switch from pre-med? And I use that example. I said, well, they do the same thing, but what medical doctors do and what medical people do is they build and they work on the body, whereas construction builds for the exterior, for the body to live in, for the people to be able to go and go to a doctor for them to work on and build in the body. So you're exactly right. It all comes together.
And I think if people start thinking about it in that regard, it's the exact same kind of thing. Right. And it's, if you look at the lawyer side of it, the lawyer side of it is the guy that works in pre-construction and writes contracts.
There you
Still
go.
paperwork.
That's awesome.
It's the paperwork side.
I love these analogies. I love them. Yeah. So if we can transition here, Jasper, a few notes that I wrote down, one of the two things I want to address really quick, and you take as much time as you want, but for me,
I'm good. You guys spend as much time as you want.
Okay. One of the things I want to talk about is we talked about wanting to encourage the younger generation. So, we're having the skilled labor gap, but we need these younger guys to have some motivation and some oomph to get into it. You talked about putting up with the older generation, and you talked about grit. Can you go back over that for me? Because I loved it.
So, so I think that grit is definitely, so there's actually, I think it was Harvard or Yale's an Ivy League study not too long ago. And when I say not too long ago, that's relative, like 5 years time frame or less, about grit, right? And what is grit? And that's like the X factor, right? And so sometimes I think, especially when you talk about the age gap between younger generations and older generations on the job site, where we have gotten rid of, we joked about the OSHA part earlier, where we have gotten rid of some of the working conditions. One thing that I find is I like it about construction, and I think other industries definitely still have it, right? But it is the earning your stripes kind of thing, right? And it's if people are going to see that you're going to come back, if they give you grief, if they tell you to go find a bucket of steam, go find the rebar stretcher, see if you can get a sky hook over here. I'm just using the most common ones, right? There's all kinds of them, right? There's all kinds of them. But the point is that being able to roll with the punches and being able to keep showing up. And that shows a lot of people what you're made of. And I don't care if it's, fraternity in college and you're kind of earning your stripes going through, or if it's a new guy on a job, that is, if you've got that grittiness to you, right, and you've got that X factor, and you've got the willingness, kind of, before we got on the call, we talked about the guy that was from the shipyard, right, and he kind of had a potty mouth, right, but he was actually really, really intelligent and knew his way around steel and knew his way around welding and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, as a young person, when you can look past that and you can say, okay, this person has intrinsic value for whatever, and you look for, I really like what you said, Walker, about not what do you do, right? Like we are more than our jobs. We are way more than our jobs. And so I think that we as Americans in general, a lot of the world works to live, right? And I think sometimes in America we live to work, right? And which is good sometimes, right? Sometimes you got to get it done, but I think that we sometimes have this identity, and this goes back to the you mentioned as well, Walker, about like, as a man, like, where is my value, right? Like, what is my value? If I'm not a doctor, if I'm not a lawyer, if I'm not whatever, am I any less valuable, right? And so men really, I think, especially in our generations, because we're not that far removed, us on this call, and even the generation before. Yes, we've had wars, right? Like we have had like the Gulf War, we've had all these other wars, but we have not had the like cataclysmic, world defining, generation defining World War II conflict. Like, I mean, you think about us, it's an elective if we wanted to go to war. Like, okay, did you go enlist in an armed service? Well, okay, you didn't, so you didn't have to go to war. There wasn't that criticality there. And so I think that I don't want to say that we're soft, right? But I think that's kind of the perception by some people is that the younger generations, mine, yours, others, that we're soft, right? And I think that going back to that grittiness, Davis, what you and I talked about, is that it's key to not let somebody's gruffness, like, don't write them off, right? Because just as much as that person may write you off for being a young person, don't write off the older generation for being not, valuable for whatever. And so it's like, okay, and I'll use this example with like the building information model. We kind of talked about that, right, Davis, when we were talking. So you have somebody that comes out that knows BIM because they've learned it in school. You've got somebody out there that is a field guy that's only been in the field and doesn't necessarily know about BIM. If you've got that stick-to-itiveness, that grittiness, that X factor, that you're going to keep coming back no matter what they say, and you can show that older generation the value in that BIM and say, hey, look, let me show you this. See how that line, now you got to reroute that line, and that's going to be a change order, and that's going to be all this extra work. And now you're fussing and cussing because another trade has run a line in that rack, and now you can't get it out of the way. If we used BIM, we would have seen that coming. So I think it's all in how it's presented. And I dealt with a situation when I was in oil and gas where I had a guy who was really, he was a seasoned foreman. He knew that plant way better than I knew that refinery. And I was candid with him, and I was like, look, Cecil, here's the deal. I need you and you need me. And here's why. Because you're not good at these new reports because it's using this software that you don't fully understand. But I don't know where everything is in this refinery. So we got to work together on this. And it worked out great. We became great friends. To this day, we're still friends. But it's sticking to it and not getting your feelings hurt and keep coming back.
Adding value.
That's it. That is a great synopsis, Walker. Very, very.
Yeah, I
accurate.
mean, that's what me and Davis talk about a lot. You know, that's something that our goal is with every podcast is one, to add value to our listeners, to our guests that we have on the show, but also add value to any person that we come in contact with, because that's what life's about.
Absolutely.
You know, if you don't add value to someone, then why would they ever want to help add value to you? You
Yep.
know, and
100%.
it's a give and
Right.
take. You know, it helps someone else out
100%.
because they'll come and help you, and you don't do it because you want something bad. You do it because, for one, it's the right thing to do. You
That's right.
know, but for two, I mean,
Yeah.
helping people out is what life's about. If you don't help someone
That's
else,
right.
then what are you going through life doing? You know,
That's right.
It-
That is right. And I think
Yeah.
that is absolutely, I think that we as a country right now, I mean, we have gone through a lot in the last, in 2020. 2020 has been a rough year for everybody, right? And so I think that exact mentality, that's where
yeah,
we
and
need to
it's just
be across the board.
everyone's afraid of conflict too, and I
That's
think
it.
especially my generation, you know, it's like no one wants to have a difficult conversation. Me and David had one 2 days ago. You know, we had miscommunication in a text message, and I was like, hey, you know, what do you mean by this? I just want to make sure we're on the same page, you know.
Right.
And it's like, and I'll be honest, I used to shy away from conversations like that until I started growing up a little bit, and I realized I'm gonna have to have them. Might as well just get used to them, and I kind of welcome them now. I actually enjoy them because I want to see
That's
the other
it.
person's point of view, you know. But
Yep.
most
Yep.
people would rather just take their opinion and go with it, and they don't want to ask questions, and they don't want to seek to understand, right? They
Right.
just seek to take their opinion and go with it. They don't care.
Right.
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 It's echo
Yeah, and
chamber
I'll take
existence.
the right. And I think one of the best things I've heard Walker say, it's on a previous podcast. We'll put it out eventually, but what he said was, we have too many people that are listening to respond and not listening to understand. And I'll be the first one to admit, I don't always get that right in every relationship. You know, I too many times will listen to respond instead of truly understanding what Walker Jasper is actually talking about. What is he going on outside of work? What's all these other factors he's got going on? And Jasper and Walker, we've been talking about value. You know, for me, my value is found with Christ. So for me, that's basically who I
Amen.
try to model to everyone. I want to try to model that to everybody. I go see that they see someone that wants to actually appreciate them. So for me, that's where I'm at. If you don't believe that, that's fine. I'm not asking you to believe that, but for me, I want to add value to someone because I believe someone did that for me. And then just kind of turn it on to the grit thing
Amen.
about our generation. You know, Walker had a really good example. You know, me, I've went through a lot at work, and then I sent a text message, and he just, thankfully, I have a good friend that was like, hey, what was that about? Is there something I've done? And hey, he just wants to talk about it. And it's me letting the stuff come off from work, go to Walker, and it's not his fault at all. So that's my
Yeah.
problem. But hey, I have a great friend that want to do that. And that's just a good example of what Walker talked about, and really put me on the spot. So that's awesome.
I didn't try to put you on the spot.
That's good though.
It's all
That's
right.
good. I mean, and
But one of the things,
that's good.
Oh, you there? Lost you for a
Yeah, no,
second.
I was
one
agreeing.
of
I
the
was saying that's
things
good. Yeah.
we talk about with our generation, Walker just talked about, with Walker's talking about our generation, we talked about, I do think personally our generation is a little soft. I really do, because we've come up with, wanting to do better, and that's great and all, but we haven't been taught the lessons that older generations had to. And so for us, one of the things for me, when we talk about grit, I get passionate about it because that's the only way I've been like known from internships. Wasn't real smart. I'm not the brightest guy ever, but I'm going to go and do the best that I can and give that X factor to this old guy, no matter what he does to me. I'm going to do my best every day.
Yep. It's the I think grit is the ability to get hit in the mouth and get back up. And that's a oversimplified synopsis, but it is having to deal with some level of adversity. And that's where I really think that and I look at it as we've been fortunate, Davis, that we haven't had to deal with the Great Depression or the you name it, but World War II, whatever. And but yeah, I think you're right. I think there's definitely, and the other thing is going back to the working conditions too. I mean, there was a when they built like the Hoover Dam, right? Frank T. Crow was the Seven Companies was the guy that he was over all of that, and there was a saying attributed to Frank T. Crow, whether he said it or not, I don't know, but it was kill a man, hire another, kill a mule, buy another. And the idea was like, look, guys are expendable. We got a lot of labor, but if the mule dies, then if we overload the mule, then we got to go pay for a brand new mule. So, men will come here for free because they get paid, but the mule will, if we got to pay for that mule. So, I mean, that is, you think about working conditions like that, right? Like that will get some grit going real quick. It's like get tough or die, literally. So I mean, I think that some things, I guess I look at it and say, okay, maybe some levels of grit like that's probably not a good thing, right? But on the flip side, being willing to see everyone's value, not discount people, and come back, and don't worry if you're going back to what I said about echo chamber existence. If you got your feelings hurt, that's okay. Come back tomorrow, and maybe if you feel better about it, maybe, and Bill or Tom or Joe or Sally or Susie is not in a bad mood, maybe talk to them about, hey, what did you mean about this? Because to your point, Walker, maybe they didn't really mean anything about it. Maybe they didn't they didn't even realize that you got bent out of shape about it. And when you talk to them, they go, oh no, that's not what I meant. No. And if it was the big thing that I think, whether you're talking about grittiness or anything, if there was one piece of advice that I could give to anybody, regardless of the profession, regardless of the stage in life, is don't be afraid of criticism. Welcome criticism.
Fantastic.
Welcome coaching, welcome development. And the biggest thing that the college experience did for me, that being in my career has done for me, everything else, is to made me realize a lot of my quirks that I'm still learning, right? And we all have them, right? And so that's what you go back, and we're going down a wormhole now, but like Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? Like the pinnacle is like self-actualization. Like we have to be able to look ourselves in the mirror and go, I'm not perfect. Like there's a few things I can improve on. And so I think that so that makes you a better employee, right? And it makes you a better person, right? And Davis, going to your Christianity standpoint, like that's me learning that has actually come through different channels, but one of the things is through scripture, right? Like that's where like I've learned a lot of the like introspection and the going, wow, I got a ways to go on that one, so every time I think I've got something figured out, then I'm like, I go back and I read the instruction manual and I go, I did not realize that was answers in there, right?
Right. You got Proverbs. It's just an instruction manual for life, right there.
Right. Like, exactly.
Man, I love that. Don't be afraid of criticism. Welcome it. I think so many more people need to hear that, especially in today's age. I mean, it's crazy. But man, we're kind of switching gears just a little bit. What would you say to kids, especially high school kids coming into college, especially college kids, freshman year, or even ones coming out of it? What would be your one piece of advice to them, just kind of coming into this world of, I have to try to please people. I want to get this quote unquote, high powered job, but I have a passion for this, but I don't know if that's going to be like, what would you say to them?
So I guess really, let me ask this to understand your question better. So are you asking if if like they want to go in one direction, but they're afraid of like disappointing people in almost kind of like what we talked about earlier about the like, I'm not a doctor, and now I'm a building science major.
Right. What would you say about the stigmatism that they kind of have to face, and what would your advice be to them of how to kind of overcome that and go in a little bit different direction than they initially thought they would?
Sure, yeah. So I thought I was going to be an engineering major early on, and then math, as Maury Povich said, proves that was a lie. Yeah, math waved bye-bye to me a long time ago. But so, I mean, that's the deal is I think that we have these preconceived notions, and sometimes, and this is what college especially is about. So to a young person specifically at that age, college is not so much just about preparing you for life from a book standpoint, right? College is about preparing you for life from a not what to think, but how to think standpoint, how to think critically, how to be introspective, how to look at the world, how to look at yourself, how to really get to what is the, I don't want to say problem, but what is it we're trying to find here, right? Almost like the scientific method type thing, right? Like you develop a hypothesis and test it type deal. And so for me, what I would look at is one, don't be afraid of criticism. Don't be afraid of taking the licks from whoever has something to say, whether it be family members, whether it be society, whatever. Because at the end of the day, one has to live with oneself. It doesn't matter if you are married. It doesn't matter if you are in a long-term relationship. It doesn't matter if, you have a family situation, a lot to live up to there, whatever. At the end of the day, we are each our own person. So in relationships, we can't let codependency get to the point of like erasing who we are, right? We can't let our families erase who we are, because at the end of the day, we are more than a job. We are more than John Doe's son. We are more than Jane Doe's wife. We are more than Fred Doe's husband. Whatever, we are each individual own person. And so life is entirely too short to be unhappy trying to please somebody else. Now I say that, and I temper that with if there are responsibilities that someone has, whether that be to a spouse, whether that be to a child, whatever, that has to be taken into consideration as well, right? So you can't just go out there all willy-nilly and say, oh, well, I don't like this job, I'm going to quit this job. And then, little Johnny doesn't have any food anymore because you were having a bad day. That gets back to the grittiness, Davis. Suck it up, Buttercup. Go back to work because little Johnny's got to eat, all right? And child labor is frowned upon. So he ain't going to be able to provide for himself. So on the flip side, you can't let other people run your life. And you, at the end of the day, have to be happy. You have to be happy. And that is so much of college is discovery. So much of the college is figuring out what you really want to do. And that's, and don't be afraid to listen to people. I mean, and here's, especially if, I met people in college that were from rural areas that had not ever traveled at all, right? And college was their first glimpse on the world. And almost like and this is, I'm dating myself now, but the Water Boy with Adam Sandler, when he says like, mama says alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth, whatever, right? Okay. So look, mama might be wrong. All right. We love mama. We love mama. Mama's good to you. She might be wrong. And I think that's really the big thing is don't be afraid don't be afraid to listen to good advice, listen to solid advice. Don't listen to my advice because I still haven't got it figured out. But there was the best advice I ever got from any professor was a professor I had in college, and he had in his office this Latin phrase, ancora imparo, which is like, I'm not finished yet. And the older I get, and this is
Focused but not
cliche,
finished.
do what? Something about
Focused
finished
but not finished.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. So the at the end of the day, the older I get, and this is totally cliche, but exactly to Davis's point, is I'm focused on being a better person every day that I can, but I'm not there yet. I mean, and to go back and pull one from scripture where it says, the mind is willing, but the body, or the spirit is willing, but the body is weak. So basically, keep putting one foot in front of the other and realizing that you're not done yet. None of us have all the answers. And, that's a grittiness, right,
Yeah,
Davis?
that's life right there. Yeah, that's life right there. Nobody is ever going to know all the answers, and we should never approach it that way. I think it's a joke, but let me ask y'all: have y'all know the difference between the chicken and the pig for breakfast?
This is a new one.
The chicken laid an egg, and the pig made bacon. So who's committed?
Ha, 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 ha.
I've never heard that one.
Okay,
before.
that may not have been all that great. I
That was pretty bad.
Butchered that, but
He said that was pretty bad. I viewed it as the bacon, as the pig was willing to make a sacrifice.
There you go.
The chicken got to keep living. The chicken didn't do much.
That was the point.
Yeah, I got you. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll cut that out of the podcast.
No, I like it. I like the
We'll
dad
cut this
jokes.
part.
They're my favorite.
The dad jokes. That's good. That's good.
No, I think that's really good, man. It kind of comes down to, honestly, to use the real estate. I love real estate. Very passionate about it. Davis, we talk about it a lot. But one thing, they talk about, especially in real estate investing, in terms of buying a house versus renting and everything. A lot goes into it. I could talk about hours for all this, but one of the things is, especially Robert Kiyosaki talks about this in his book Rich Dad Poor Dad as well, and he says that why would you buy a cow and sell it and just be able to profit from its meat one time, right? Versus why would you be able to buy a cow and then milk it every day? It's like, so it's just going back to exactly what Davis just said and what you just said. It's just doing life the right way, and taking advantage of every single day, learning, growing, using your resources better than you did the day before. And like you said, that's life. It's just getting better every day.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because going back, bringing this thing full circle, going back to the trades part. So I asked my uncle how he got involved in building houses, right? And what made him think that he wanted to essentially be a GC, basically, when you're building houses. And he said, when I would go on break as an electrician, he said, instead of just going and sitting in the truck and taking a snooze or eating my lunch or whatever, he said, I would go and talk to the plumbers, or I would talk to the sheet metal workers, or I would talk to the insulators, or he said, any trade, something that I didn't know about. He said, something that I'd seen them doing. He goes, I'd go talk to them on break. What do you guys got going on over here? What's that? Why are you doing that? And he said, that's what made me decide that, I can go do this, because at the end of the day, never stop learning. I don't care if you are 100 years old, never stop learning. Learn something new every day.
So good.
And it can come from a guy with grease under his nails or a white coat on.
Man, that's such a great sentiment and great saying. And Davis has something that he uses all the time, and it's really made an impact to me. I believe he got it from his aunt, to give her credit, but they say, listen, learn, and lead with questions. and always just continue to learn, continually continue to ask questions. And what people don't get is if you ask questions, man, you will learn so much more. And Jasper, we're running out of time, so I'll
Sure.
go ahead and close this out. But man, dude, this has been awesome, and it's been an incredible podcast. I've learned so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed every single moment we got to talk with you, and I hope that we can have you on the podcast soon. In the near
Sure.
future, we want to circle back around and get to talk,
Absolutely.
see what you're doing. And for our listeners of Laying Foundation, we so much appreciate all of you. We're getting this started. This video, by the time you're listening to this, it'll probably be about 3 weeks from when we actually recorded it. But we are really excited to continue getting amazing guests on this show, like Jasper and everyone we've had so far. And so again, Jasper, we're so thankful and so appreciative of you coming on this show, and we really look forward to having you back on it again.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.